Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Connection Corner of the new year. I am the known community manager, Barb Dangle, and in a moment, I am going to welcome today's guest, Rick Callahan of Krative. But before I do that, I want to share a little bit about Known. Known is a dynamic co working community to connect people across their fields of expertise, endeavors, and experiences. And though we started as a co working community and space in downtown New Haven and are still the only co working space in downtown New Haven, we moved our community to the virtual world once the quarantine started. As a reminder, Known Co-working has hourly, daily, monthly plans for dedicated desks and office spaces, as well as conference rooms and Zoom rooms available for rent. If you'd like to know more about the space, feel free to send me an email. I can be reached at barb@knowncoworking.com. You can also check us out at nhvknown.com or follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Known Coworking and DM us there. Now, I mentioned that we moved our community online when the pandemic arrived, and as a result, we now have three virtual programs. There's Digital Media Sync, this one, Connection Corner, and Pivot Talk. You can catch free replays of all of our episodes of all these shows under Known Live and Events on our website. DMS, Digital Media Sync, is your window to the digital world. It airs every Tuesday at 8:30, and it's hosted by Julia Googe, the social media maven of Agents of Branding. Pivot Talk is a virtual stage for businesses to share and learn as they grow. And this show, The Connection Corner, is a place for entrepreneurs, artists, dreamers, thinkers, creators, educators, and community members to share who they are, what they do, who they serve, and how. We try to air it approximately weekly, and it's not necessarily at the same time every week. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at barb@knowncoworking.com. Our purpose in the physical and the virtual spaces is to make connections between people. We're here to help you get inspired and connected and known. Speaking of getting known, we've got virtual networking every Monday from 4 to 5 p.m. You can find us by going to our website, nhvknown.com, clicking on Known Live and Events, and scroll down to the calendar, and you'll see a graphic about virtual networking. You click on that, it'll take you right to our virtual room. And you should be prepared to have about a 2-minute pitch, either about your business idea, or who it is you're looking to connect with. You may have more than that, but it's a good idea to be prepared for that. And I want to bring Rick Callahan on the show. Before I do, I want to tell you a little bit about my relationship with him. This is a classic co-working story. So I met Rick when he was the entrepreneur in residence at the New Haven Public Library through somebody that I met through networking. And then when I started at Known Co-working, I invited him to come there. And it turned out that he ended up moving his office there. I ended up hiring him as my business coach and my branding and marketing person. And Known Co-working has also hired his firm as our branding and marketing firm. So without further ado, I want to bring Rick online, which means I have to take that slide off. There you go. All right, Rick, welcome.
Hello, hello.
I'm so glad you're here.
I'm very glad to be here with you.
Excellent. And you are coming to us right from Known Co-working, aren't
Right
you?
from Known, I am, yes. I moved my office here about a year ago.
Right. Fantastic. Yep. That's right. It's been a year. I think you said February, right?
Yeah, January, February timeframe. Yep.
January, February. All right. Fantastic. So I think, we'll just let you start by saying, who you are, what you do, who you serve, etc. I know I'd love to hear your entrepreneurial origin story, and I'm sure I'll have questions for you throughout, but take it away.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Rick Callahan. I'm the founder and CEO of Krative. Krative is a brand marketing agency. We do branding, design, and marketing strategies. full service creative services that we do for a lot of small to mid-sized businesses, though we have done a bit of consulting work with Fortune 500 companies, national companies, brands like that. My passion really is working with the business owner or brand visionary, as I call them, directly, one-on-one. Mostly because my passion is working with passionate business owners. So often I'll say that Krative is the brand agency for passionate business owners. So, yeah.
All right, let me find my way back here. There we go. I haven't done the show for a while, so I forgot how to do all the technical things. So now you did not start as a branding and marketing person. You
No.
started in web development. Is that true?
Yeah, well, I guess technically I started around like 13 or 14 when the internet was just coming on, and like AOL 3, I think, was the version that I was getting into. I was making websites, that were restricted to America Online, AOL, for video games that I enjoyed playing back then. And
Okay.
what a hobby grew out of creating graphics using whatever software I can find back then.
Mhm.
And, I became a freelance designer by the time I was 14, 15
Man. So
age.
you were like born an entrepreneur.
I guess. I think I liked just playing with the tools and tinkering and designing and creating things.
Mhm.
And then I realized that people will sometimes pay for this. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So it turned out that I was able to convince some folks in the family, my father, for his work. I was able to create kind of a really tacky website that had background music and like animated GIFs circling around and
Uh-huh.
all these awful things I would never do today for a website, but got to do that. There's another family business for someone else I did a website for. And then my brother found my first real paying client in town. He was just shopping around, I think, for a gift, and it was a fashion boutique in my hometown. And I got a website out of that and made a logo for her randomly. I didn't know I did logos then, but I did. So it was more of a web designer and graphic designer in the beginning. And that kind of has evolved and grown, and a lot more strategy has been kind of injected into that.
Right. Yeah. So when did Krative come along?
Krative is the part two to my first business, which was Weblux.
What was it?
Weblux,
Okay.
Weblux. So Weblux is now defunct. That was my first business. That was a web design and development and marketing company. So it was more web marketing. Really, I just was making websites and doing some design work and helping people get found online. Back when we used to say, hey, the website is your next business card, sort of thing.
Mhm.
You would never say that now, but
Right.
that's when that was. And then fast forward several years, I realized that the work I was doing was selling an end deliverable to these small business owners in the area. And a lot of times they thought they knew what they needed. Really, they just kind of wanted certain things because they think they were supposed to have them. And I realized that, hey, maybe you shouldn't go for this logo, or you shouldn't go for this website, or maybe you shouldn't, whatever it was. And I was starting to consult with them on marketing strategies, right? And who are they actually intending to sell to and attract? And I was able to start designing things in that regard, designed for their intended target markets. And so this shift was happening kind of internally for myself in how I worked with my clients and also how I
Right.
presented myself to clients. And so I rebranded my own company. I
Mhm.
closed down Weblux, considered that like a lesson learned, and moved forward into Krative, which was this big idea of a holistic marketing firm. This is what I would call it back then. It was taking all the pieces and bringing them together as far as how do you build strategy into your business? How does branding, I didn't know that was the term then, really come from like who you are, what you stand for, and how do you portray that value to your customers or intended target markets,
Mhm.
and bringing these things together with design and marketing and websites, right? That was Krative, and
Mhm.
that was 2010. So Krative's been around now 11 years or so.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me about the name.
Krative.
Mm.
I wanted something no one else would have, but I wanted something that was memorable, right? Same thing I did with Weblux. I was just making up random words. I was trying to find names that were maybe a different language that seemed English enough.
Yeah.
And then with Krative, it really was just a homonym, right? So a word that sounds
Right.
like a word. And so creative, I really wanted to make the company called the Creative Group, but that's taken by many people.
Yeah.
and definitely protected as far as like a trademark and all that. So I
Mhm.
ended up coming up with spelling my own version of Krative. So it sounds very similar, spelled a little different, K obviously. But yeah, it was just trying to be creative with the word creative, really.
Right. Yeah. One of the stories that I remember you telling me, and I'm sure it was before you and I were actually working together, with you as my coach and my branding and marketing person, was about the logo.
Mm.
And I wonder, I know, oh, here it is. Is it okay if I pull up
Yeah,
this slide
sure.
onto the screen so you can kind of talk about? Well, first of all, this slide is incredibly informative.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah. So, so if you want to kind of talk through this, because I
Yeah,
love that. For those of you who don't know, it's the darker versions of the orange, yellow, green, and white in the middle. That's the creative logo. But
right.
take it away, Rick.
Yeah,
Tell us about this.
if you look in the bottom right corner of that graphic that's on the screen, that's the
Oh yeah. Okay.
primary version of the logo at this
Hmm.
point. The idea here is that it really is three circles that are overlapping, so kind of Venn diagram of sorts of three different overlapping shapes.
Hmm.
And the idea in the beginning was that this really represented or signified the various components within marketing and business strategies coming together, right? Bringing all the pieces together to one cohesive strategy, not just having a bunch of random tactics and trying whatever works in business, but really thinking this through and trying to know who you serve and all these things and bring the pieces together, right? Now we've kind of refined what this means, and that's what you're looking at now. If you look at the kind of bubbly parts, the more faded components of the logo outside of the logo, you have opportunity, meaning, and passion.
Hmm.
These are just labels I've given to how I like to work with small business owners, heck, even the very large corporations and people in the marketing departments or in the brand side. Really talking about what is their brand. What sort of opportunity can we seek? How can things be? Where can they get started with something?
Hmm.
Right. So that's really talking about their vision and motivation of what they're looking at. And if you talk about their vision and purpose, that I call it the why or the meaning, right? A lot of folks in the business world say you really should figure out your why with your business. Well, I like to call it, interchangeably with the meaning. Why do you believe this? Why are you driven to do these things you do in your business or your, why do you sell what you sell or whatever it is? Why is your vision better than such other, whatever company? You really ask these why questions and get to some deeper meaning insights.
Hmm.
And then the last part is the what. To me, this is where a lot of folks have passion. Business owners will come to me, especially startups, and they'll be very excited about what they're doing, what they're creating. What market they might be serving, and what value they perceive that they're providing to that market. So a lot of times that passion is behind the what, and I see that is where the purpose and the motivation overlap for them. So
Hmm.
it really is kind of a cycle that never ends, and you're always kind of analyzing these kind of deeper rooted introspective components of your psyche when you're a business owner and defining your brand. My job is to help people to do that. It's a lot of peeling back layers to the onion of what's underneath and what insights can we surface, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where the logo comes from, is pulling these pieces together,
Right.
three concentric circles. Is that the right word? Three circles overlapping, kind of a Venn diagram, and those overlapping parts are the
Mhm.
logo.
Right. Yeah. I think it's incredibly clever, and I think it speaks to like your philosophy of like how you work with people. So before I get into that, like asking you some specific questions, like what are
Yep.
some common errors and all that kind of stuff, I want to tell people why I chose to work with you. So, what happened was when I started at Known as a community manager, we were like, we don't know what we're going to be like. And one of the ideas we tossed around was maybe we'll have an entrepreneur in residence. And I was like, who we need to bring in here is Rick Callahan. Because I had met him, I had one consultation with him. And I was like, I'm coming back to that guy. I don't know when. And I called him and he came down and he was like the second time he was there giving tours to people. I was like, damn, this is like he was like taking ownership over the space already. And I love a person who takes initiative like that. That was awesome. You were like, this place is awesome, and I'm going to help. And then we ended up doing a workshop where my friend Alex, who's got his fingers in like 10 pies,
Yeah, he does.
you had been chatting with him and you were like, let me do like a workshop with you. And you did this workshop with him where you helped him. And I now know what you did. I didn't remember this at the time, was you helped him kind of like, what are your core values? And it really started with that. And by the time I was done watching you with your workshop, I'm like, that's the guy that I need, because I had one long-term business coach, and he kind of took me as far as he could take me. And then I had a couple other people, that coaches I had done some sessions with. And I was like, Rick is the guy that I need. And the reason I said that was because like Marie Forleo calls it, being a multi-passionate person.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
gift that I think that Rick excels at is helping multi-passionate people say, what's the core and how do I convey that to other people, so that I'm not like like a shotgun shooting stuff out at the universe, that you're being very strategic. And one of the things that I have absolutely loved about working with him as my business coach is that he is both strategic and tactical. So he helps me to think, where am I going and what am I doing and why am I doing it? And then he also helps me with, do this and also do this next. And one of the other things that I really love about working with him is this technical background that he has, because he actually knows how to do lots of things. Because my business is essentially run on the internet, and as many people nowadays are, like the bulk of my business is done on the internet. And so that means technology, I've got to use some technology, and I need to know how to do some things. I don't need to know how to do everything. And so I just wanted to share that story with people. And I have referred many, many people to Rick. So I'm like, who you need? You need Rick, because he has this gift. And to me, I think it is because of this notion of core values for you,
Absolutely.
that, people know what their core values are. It might take them a few minutes to kind of articulate them, but he has this really fantastic exercise to help you figure out what they are if you don't know
Yeah.
off the top of your head. But before I go into any questions or anything, I just want to pause for a moment for my diatribe and see if you want to like add anything to whatever I said there.
Yeah. Well, first off, I very much appreciate everything you said there. I think the process that you speak to, that I take people through, is certainly the way you explained it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really helping people to, especially multi-passionate people like you, Barb, right? People who are like here and they're all in, and they're also all in over here, and then they're kind of shifting and finding the blended part of where they merge together over here,
Mm-hmm.
finding that core common element to all of this, and being able to really figure out, okay, what is that common thread of these different components or aspects of what you're trying to do or what you're passionate about. Get me passionate about it too, right? And the way I have to get passionate about it personally, selfishly, to work with somebody, is to figure out the common thread, because then I can help extrapolate where that's going, right? What vision do we actually have? So I have a few exercises and kind of mini workshops that I can work with business owners to figure those things out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what you're referring to with that particular exercise with the core
The
value
cards.
cards,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
have it's somewhere around here, but I have a deck of cards. It's several dozen, maybe about 100 cards that I spread across an entire table for folks. And each one has a different adjective, mostly adjectives, to describe literally anything. And the amazing thing about this exercise is that whoever I'm sitting in front of, as long as that person's being authentic and they know kind of what they sort of want to do or kind of what excites them and what they're passionate about, I can lay these cards out and prompt them with a few questions, and we will always get to what their core values are as either a person or as a person who represents their brand. And my job is to help them see that using these words as cues, because it's kind of like an ink blot test or a Rorschach test is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Subjective. You put meaning into those words. And
Right.
so when you pick up those different words, or you randomly grab a certain word out of thin air that I might offer to you, it's
Mm-hmm.
because you're applying meaning to it that means something to you, and you latch onto it and you run with that. My job is to grab those clues and run
Yeah.
with you, right? And to
Right.
really help define what your brand and your core values are.
Right. Yeah. So you know what's popping into my mind right now is I remember when I did that exercise with you, you said to me, you've literally done this faster than anybody I have ever seen do this before. And I've never remembered to ask you, like, what do you make of that? Does that like I don't
Yeah, I think what's interesting is within this last year and a half, I think there are probably 3 clients I did the exercise with, you being one of them, where it was like, this is insanely fast how quick these few folks did. And you know, maybe it's just coincidence, but all 3 being female. Uh, I think there's just been a lot of introspective work that the person's done.
I agree.
Right, as far as who are they, what do they stand for, what boundaries do they may have as a person, and what do they expect of themselves, right? And that really helps you to look through the words and go, that's not a word, that doesn't represent me, or no, that's not who I'm serving, that's not why I'm doing this, right? And to be able to have these little prompts or these cues really are shortcuts for people to get to something quicker about finding that meaning, that passion, and that opportunity they're looking to seize, right? So I think it really is more that introspective work that some of these folks have done, for
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, good to know. And I would say for me, yeah, very clear. I have a lot of clarity on my
Mm-hmm.
values, and I
Mm-hmm.
really live a very values oriented life. I always thought that I did, but I turns out when I went through 12-step recovery, I learned that I was actually doing a lot of things that violated my values. And now I live in line with my values, and that's one of the things. Like we talk about having peace and serenity in recovery, and it's
Right,
because we live in line with our values.
right. Yeah, and I
But
think that certainly comes through with your own work, for sure.
right, yeah, yeah. So you mentioned that you really like working with passionate business owners.
Yeah,
So that can mean a lot of different things.
for sure.
So, can you give me some more adjectives to describe some of the ideal people that you really feel like you just gel so well with and that you really are able to help really well? Besides their being passionate, is
Hmm.
there any particular stage in their business that they're in? Is there any particular type of industry that they're in? Any other kinds of things?
Yeah, so I guess the I'll give 2 answers to that. The incorrect answer that I shouldn't be giving as a business advisor type is no. I love working with everybody.
Right.
That's my personal responses. I actually just enjoy I feel like I'm really getting to know the person that I'm working with, and we get
Okay.
to really partner up as a team to achieve some vision,
Hmm.
right? And the passion is the trick of what I tap into with folks to be able to kind of get there with them, right?
Hmm.
So, like, what makes them passionate, figuring that out together really makes it easy for us to do our work to figure out a vision, aka what strategy we're going to implement to get to a certain place, right?
Hmm.
So it helps me get to what tactics do we have to take in a plan to get to a certain place, all because they have a certain passion to get there, right? So personally, anyone who has that sort of passion. Now, to articulate what the heck passion might mean in a person, it really comes down to either they have a very strong drive to know or to realize something positive or good in the world. They want to bring something to others or to the world that they feel is going to enhance, improve, or make people feel better, right? Just something good. These people have a very innate drive to do that no matter what they're doing, it seems. And when I have initial consultations, often these different stories of what they've done before come up and how they always landed where they're at now and why we're talking. Right? It's always a narrative in that direction. And then it's like, well, I find what's interesting about that is you seem to always want to, and there's some common thread there. And that's
Right.
what drives them. And so we kind of talk about that.
Hmm.
And so it's that innate drive that I think certain people have to bring something to the world, to make something real.
Hmm.
And I love to take abstract and bring it to reality. I like living in the abstract and playing with the abstract, but I also like playing with it to make it into something more real.
Right.
And so I think it's those who have a drive
Okay.
to achieve something and to make something real.
Okay. So I love this notion of taking the stuff from the abstract and bringing it into the concrete real world. Can you give an example of what you mean by that?
Well, so yeah, a lot of folks have called me asking about the real thing, the actual thing they think they want or need. Like, I need a logo, I need a website, I need a whatever. And if I ask why enough times in a row, like a 4-year-old child, why, we'll
Yeah.
get to something that's kind of like an innate, like almost abstract concept of an idea of
Okay.
what problem they're trying to solve, or
Mhm.
what thing they're trying to bring to the world, or what invention they're trying to make. So they're coming in with the tangible, usually saying, "Hey, I want to make I need a logo and a name for this business so that we're doing, I don't know, we're I can't even think of a thing right now. Sorry, but
Selling widgets.
selling the widgets, right?" And I'll be like, "Okay, I can ask you about the widgets, or I can ask about how you got to this idea of the widgets and why the widgets, right?" And so, like, abstracting that, and then
Mhm.
kind of abstracting more until we get to the concept of what these widgets are all about, why, what's the meaning and purpose behind them, and then we find the passion, and then we bring it back to the reality with more of a streamlined vision together.
Mhm. So it sounds like you might work very frequently with new business owners. Is that always the case, or do you also like work with people who've been in business for a long time?
It's pretty even, actually.
Oh,
I think a lot of the folks I'll talk to that we may or may not work with, like potential leads or prospects, are mostly new businesses. Um, it's not until the recent year or two that I've started taking on the ones that aren't necessarily prepared to engage Krative as a company,
mhm.
because now I can do coaching work.
Mhm.
But prior to that, it's been pretty even. It's been folks who have existing businesses, been around for 50 years, and maybe they need to do kind of a relaunch on their brand and reinvigorate, their company a bit, and reintroduce the new generation that's taking over the business of a family that owns the business, right? So we have a few of those that have been around with us for years now. We have other companies that maybe 5-10 years in business. They're talking to us at that point. And
Mhm.
then, for sure, a lot of people will call as a startup or as a prospective startup and just want to talk through the idea of what business they're trying to start. Yeah.
Right. So, that actually just brought up a question for me. Besides, like a family business that's going to be handed down to the new generation, what might be some other reasons why a company might want to, or need to rebrand?
Yeah, and I guess the idea of rebrand, for anyone watching or listening, we always think of. I think most people think of a rebrand as like a whole new logo design, done, right? But usually that logo design signifies something.
Mhm.
It usually signifies deeper change that might be happening, or trajectory of the company might be shifting.
Mhm.
So we'll recommend the potential of a brand evolution or a rebrand, whatever we call it, depending on how much we visually change. If a company is, say, there's new leadership or there's been an acquisition, right? So one company swallowed another company and now they're merging together. Um, you might want to redefine what is that company about? Who are they as a brand? Who do they serve? What market segments? What value offering do they have? That's going to kind of shift and evolve, and therefore the way you represent it and present it to the world should shift and evolve with that.
Mhm.
Something really leaves a sour taste in people's mouth when you go and try and do something with a company and everything you've perceived about them is a complete mismatch to the experience you have. And a
Right.
lot of that is done through marketing and advertising and sales.
Mhm.
Word of mouth might even, you might get one idea of a reputation of what a company, what experience you can have with them, even a restaurant, right?
Yeah.
The logo looks polished, everything looks great on the outside. That you hear an advertisement on Spotify or you see something on Instagram or whatever, right? It all looks amazing. You go there and maybe it's the worst service you ever had. They made you wait forever.
Mhm.
Maybe it's really dirty, right? None of this seems to match what you've
Yeah.
perceived already. That's a brand misalignment,
Okay.
right? So maybe their brand wasn't being presented accurately. Maybe they need to realign their brand positioning and who they're targeting, and how they present what they do and what they offer, right?
Yeah.
So a rebrand or a brand alignment, a realignment or an evolution, all these are really when a brand needs to um, optimize how it presents itself to the world, to whom it serves, and what it's offering.
So that makes me, the way that you just said that, it made me think of what you often say, and I don't know if this is your tagline or not, but you say a brand is a promise kept.
Right.
And what the way that you just said that was like you go to the restaurant, you have this expectation and it doesn't live up to it. That's a brand misalignment. And so
Mhm.
now I understand even more deeply this notion of a brand as a promise kept is
Right.
all the things that ideas you have about the business because the image we're projecting are actually true.
Right.
That's
Right.
what that means.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the brand as a promise kept is something I think I said randomly in a meeting with a client a few years ago,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Hey, you should write that down." I was like, "You're right. I should write that
Yeah,
down."
you should.
Because really, truly, your brand is the promise you're giving to your target markets, right? What expectations are you setting?
Hmm.
And we set a lot of subconscious expectations just as people talking to one another, the way we dress, the way we talk, the words we use, you know, anything about how we present ourselves. A brand is just a manifestation or representation of a company, a product, a person, right? And it's the same thing. If it's misrepresenting itself, you're
Hmm.
kind of breaking an expectation, and you're kind of breaking the promise that you've been setting all along to the
Hmm.
people you've been communicating to, right? So the idea is to really know what is the promise of your brand. Like, how do you keep your integrity of your brand? Uh,
Right.
and it does take that introspective work that we've talked about earlier.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to move into now some of the typical reasons that people come to you, some of the things that they struggle with most, and maybe some of the misconceptions people have about like what is branding and marketing.
Yeah. I guess I'll start with the misconceptions because I don't know why not. I do see that branding as a term has become more popularized and I guess mainstream in the business vernacular of everybody now over the last 5 or 6 years. And I do see that people use branding as kind of a catch-all term that equates to marketing, or it might even equate to just a logo. And I think those are two very inaccurate representations of what branding or a brand is, right? And unfortunately, if you do look up what a brand is in different dictionaries or on different brand websites, you're going to get kind of variations of definitions that aren't all 100% the same. It's certainly not a logo, and it's certainly not just an equivalent to or synonym of marketing itself. So I would say that branding, if I'm not using the phrase that I say, a brand is a promise kept, branding is kind of the concept or the abstract idea of all the components of what a product, person, service, even a place, uh, all the components and aspects of that represent it and what expectations it sets for the experience of that entity.
Mm,
Kind of a fluffy idea, but
mm,
the idea really is you're getting a certain vibe every time you look at a logo. You're getting a certain feeling when you hear a commercial or whatever on the radio. You're getting a certain message and a value proposition every time you talk to somebody, a sales associate to an organization. All
mm,
of these communication strategies are a part of advertising and marketing and advertising are all very much affected by the umbrella of branding,
mhm.
right? So branding is kind of this conceptual idea that oversees or is the core of all these components of marketing and advertising. So really, it's just knowing who you are, what expectations are you setting, what value proposition do you have, and who do you serve.
Mm. All right, let me come back here with you.
Sure.
So, I'm going to take a little bit of a risk for my own personal business here because what's coming through for me is this idea of a mismatch. So, my business is called Higher Power Coaching and Consulting, and it's called that for a very specific reason that, I am higher powered, I am connected to a higher power, and it drives everything that I do.
Hmm.
People have an idea of what that means. And on the other hand, I swear a lot. And I don't do it necessarily on this show, but I have a podcast called Fragmented to Whole Life Lessons from 12 Step Recovery, on which I do swear on a regular basis. And what's interesting is I've only had ever one person that said to me, "Could you stop with the cussing?" Everybody else that's mentioned my cussing has said, "I actually appreciate that you cuss because there's
Yeah,
a certain authenticity
exactly.
that comes through, and I know that you're not faking the funk when you say it." And what's just occurred to me is, you look at my website and I have this, like I have this is my logo. I have this beautiful logo that
Yep.
looks like, the God speaking from above, and it's called Higher Power. And then here I am with the F bombs. and And I like just this is the first time that it's ever occurred to me. Am I, creating a mismatch? So I might be putting you on the spot by asking you that question, but I wonder if you
Yeah.
have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, so what's the particular mismatch you think you're seeing?
Well, I'm guessing that some people say they didn't listen to my podcast and they look at my website and they read all my stuff and then they go and listen to my podcast and they're like, what's with the F bomb? Does that jive for them or is that too like jarring for them? I don't know.
I think you answered your own question already when you said you only had one person who felt a little uncomfortable, right? And that's
Yeah,
probably a personal preference to that person. But
right.
you've already said it. It comes down to authenticity. It comes
Yeah,
down to, are you being sincere and
yeah,
real in everything that you say and
right.
do present, right? Whether that's through audio on your podcast, whether
Yeah,
that's through writing in the
yeah,
articles that I know you do,
right.
your
Which
email.
I do swear in, by the way. I swear in the articles too.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to, you could make a conscious choice to swear
Uh-huh.
and it actually adds to the authenticity,
Hmm.
right? You could censor it a little bit and
Hmm.
it might actually be a little bit more
Yeah,
appealing to certain
yeah,
folks.
yeah.
But the fact that you do is a conscious choice that seems authentic to you, and those that you serve already
Hmm.
seem to get that authentic experience from you, whether in person, on the podcast, in writing. It's consistent.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
authenticity
True. Yeah,
is
it is.
consistent. It's
Yeah.
when you're inconsistent that you start to have that misalignment, that people will go, well, why is she seem so one way here and one way here?
Right.
It was fake. Like, is she
Okay.
selling me on something? Am I being, some wool being pulled over my eyes? Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, knowing you, the level that I know you at this point, I would for sure say I think you're just being authentic and sincerely
Yeah.
yourself. And that's probably
Yeah.
very important to your brand.
Yeah. I think that as you were talking, I realized I think like I don't swear on my website, for example.
Right.
Like,
Well,
so
yeah.
I guess that's what I was thinking that they could read over that. But if they're reading my material or if they're listening to my material, then they might be like, you know. We
Yeah.
do have a couple of comments, so I want to
Right.
pop them up. So Kelly Vaughn says passion is important, but strategy is essential. Rick can deliver. So I assume that Kelly must be a client of yours.
Yes. And
Um,
Kelly has actually begun helping me a little bit too, on the creative side. So that's been
oh,
wonderful.
awesome.
Thank you,
Great.
Kelly.
And then we have another one from our friend Julia.
Hey,
What are some
Julia.
ways you have evolved your brand, Rick?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Mm.
So some ways that I've evolved my brand. I'm guessing Creative's brand.
Hmm.
So Creative's brand has evolved in the beginning. I'm going to speak to this symbolically because the logo has changed here. But in the beginning, the Creative logo was actually a very muted color palette. The yellow was a very like faded, muted yellow tone. The green was like, it certainly wasn't a grass green, right? It was like maybe a stain that's been faded over the years, grass stain. And then the orange was barely even an orange. It was a hint of an orange, right? And what was interesting about that is, the person who was the brand visionary and the person that kind of is the face of Creative, got more confident in my process and methodologies. I realized that I felt much more vibrant in expressing myself, and the logo itself has evolved since then. It's become much more vibrant. The colors, we started doing pops of color on everything. We actually moved into an office in New Haven a few years back, prior to here at Known, and we were choosing different colors on the walls. We were evolving it there. In the previous office before that in Wallingford, we had bright green walls. Going to New Haven, we started to change, like, this wall is going to be like a blue, this wall is going to be a this. And this was all representative symbolically of the evolution of going from a very quiet and timid brand trying to put itself out there quietly and not really advertise itself or speak its mind, to the next iteration as we move to our next office, bright walls, green walls, orange trim, like all sorts of crazy cool stuff like that, to be like, no, we know what we're doing. Here we are. We're loud. We're proud. And this is what we do. And then as we moved into our most recent locations, it's been toned down because we feel more confident, and we know who we are. We know our process. That we do this for years. We know exactly what we're doing and who we're helping, right? So the brand has evolved, in step with the confidence of myself as a service provider and my team and our processes, how we work together with our clients and what we can offer, and the way we represent it in our advertising, in our marketing, in our physical space, the colors, the imagery we use, all these different things had evolved with it. So the brand has evolved certainly as a reflection of where the company is in its current form, right? So now I feel like we're even leaning more into an evolution now where we're going to be using just a symbol of the logo without even the word creative, right? And just using kind of bold single colors to represent who we are. And because, we know who we are, we're getting a little bit of a reputation regionally. That's cool. And we can do that now, right? We've built a sort of identity that we feel confident in. The process backs it up. The experience that people have had as certainly referred other clients, that backs it up. So yeah, it's evolved in a lot of different ways. And I think we're having a fun time evolving the brand along with that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we only have about 5 more minutes left. So are there any, I think I asked you a few questions in there now. I've forgotten what all of them were. Were there any other things that you want to add before we go that you haven't had an opportunity to share?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what your questions were actually. I think you asked something about what do people commonly need or ask
Yeah.
for.
Like, what are the kinds of struggles that your clients have? You talked about the myths and misconceptions, that
Mhm.
people have, but like, what are common issues that you help your clients resolve? I guess that
Yeah,
you already talked about, like, you basically take the scattershot stuff and you kind of bring it into focus and you help them come synthesize and come out with like the common threads. But other than that, like, what are some of the other kinds of issues you help your
yeah.
clients?
So I guess there's two levels or two directions to how I help clientele. We have the agency side where we have a very particular process that we go through to help people find the common theme, the core values, turn that into communication strategies for the target markets, and then create like logos and websites and marketing materials and advertising and whatever tools they need to get out there and grow their business, right? But then there's also the coaching side and the consulting side where I personally work with clientele. And what I find interesting there is like there might be some folks who are so narrowly focused on what they do or so zeroed in on one particular output of what they want in their business that they forget to look around and find other perspectives. So my job is at that point not to find the common thread because that's what they're stuck on, but to help them to find ways to pivot and to look at new opportunities and to try new things. And sometimes that means coaching the person out of their comfort zone and to guide them and give them some processes that they might be able to just try new things if they're too stuck on one thing, or vice versa. If they're trying too many different things and they're very passionate and excited, but they don't have strategy, to help them to realize how they might be able to reflect and refine their processes or whatever it is they're trying to do so that they can plan a more strategic approach to things. So
Yeah.
on the coaching side, it's really working with the particular person in the business to achieve their brand and marketing goals. And then on the agency side, it really is just they come in asking for one particular thing. We ask why a million times, and then we get to kind of a core problem they're trying to solve, and then we propose how we fix that with our services as it relates to brand strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one last thing that I want to say, I mentioned earlier that not only is Rick for my business, he's my business coach and branding and marketing agency, but he also is for known co-working where, I obviously work. So I work really closely with him on a very regular basis. I've seen him in an incredibly wide variety of circumstances and situations. And you are so like calm, cool, and collected all the time. I wouldn't say I've seen you in like super stressful situations, but I've seen you in situations where you seem to think that you're pushing really hard against people or back against people, and I'm like, I wasn't pushing hard at all. So so not only does he have this incredible skill set, he's incredibly easy to work with. So I've really
Mm.
loved working with you. And you talked earlier about building a relationship with the business, like the person
Yeah.
that is the business, the backbone of the business, and that building a relationship with them is important to you. And I found that to be so true. And I feel like in some ways you can see me better than I can see me because of the lens that you come at this with. And so it's just been such a great experience. We do have another comment
Sure.
the Global Girls Worldwide Women. Coaching is a great asset for those who are pursuing something other than the straightforward widget questions. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So that's me.
absolutely.
I have a coaching and consulting business, and so that's absolutely, I'm not manufacturing something, and the process of coaching someone it's not like it's a linear process. And
Right.
so,
Yeah, I
absolutely,
think
very well said. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Global Girls Worldwide Women.
Yeah.
So, Barb, you mentioned a moment ago, like you feel like sometimes I could see you better than you, and I,
Yeah.
and I think it really comes down to having that objective outside perspective,
Yeah.
right? And being able to trust that that person you're working with as a coach or a consultant is
Yeah.
able to honestly and candidly work with you to talk about what they're perceiving, but
Mhm.
also just make sure they're staying on track with you on the goals that you actually have, right?
Yeah.
And having a longer term vision, 6 months, 1 year down the road,
Mhm.
where do you want to be? Great. Now let's talk about now and
Mhm.
work our way towards it, right? So I think it's a teamwork situation.
Yeah.
Like you may feel that way, but I'm just repeating back oftentimes with the clients,
Right.
forgetting that they've already seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember the specifically one of the things you said to me was, you're much more than a coach. I see you as you're the author of
Oh,
your
yeah.
life.
Right.
And coaching is one aspect of what you do. And then you were also like, and you should be an author. And Rick actually, I'm going to use the word push here, but I mean, shepherd is probably a better word. It was a very gentle pushing me to start writing and publishing on Medium. And I'm about to publish my 18th article, one of which I had featured, most of which I've had curated, which is the big deal on Medium. And that process of doing that, I cannot tell you what it has done for me personally and professionally. Just doing the writing and
Yeah,
showing up consistently for myself, and also repurposing my material. Just so many benefits.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Any last words?
I would just add in that if anybody watching would like to have some sort of, not doing a sales pitch, a free coaching or consult session, you can go to Crative's website, creative.com. Just reach out, say you saw me on the show on the Connection Corner, and I will honor that.
Yeah. And actually, I normally usually put up banners for the guests. And I haven't done the show in like 4 weeks. I've lost all of my memory of all the things I was supposed to do. So I apologize for not having your banner up. There you go. Okay, so you want to go ahead and, oh, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody is looking for a free, I'll go up to a 1 hour consultation or coaching session, and whatever it is you're doing with your brand or business, I'll
Yeah.
honor that. Just mention the show, and
Right.
we'll work towards it together.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. So I'm going to take you off the screen, but if you wouldn't mind sticking around for a minute, that would be really great.
Of course.
All right. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Barb.
much, Rick. And I really appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're so glad that you were here for our first episode in 2021. I want to remind you that even if you're watching the recording, go ahead and leave a comment, because we will make sure that Rick gets it. And I encourage you to follow up with him. If you're even thinking about contacting him, please do. It will be absolutely worth it. Whether you continue to work on along, with him in the future or not, I'm sure it'll be really helpful to you. I do want to remind you to join us next Tuesday at 8:30 in the morning, and every Tuesday at 8:30 for Digital Media Sync, which is your window to the digital world. And I thank you again for joining me. Have a great week, everyone. Bye now.